This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight south of the border on the west coast. Wildfires continue to rage and ravage California. The two largest burning outside Los Angeles remain 0% contained, according to officials. One did stop spreading today, but conditions remained windy and dry. City leaders described the disaster as historic.
The scale of the impact today is larger than anything that I have seen in my career.
Destroyed homes number in the thousands. The total area burned has passed 11,000 hectares. 180,000 people have been ordered to evacuate. The number of deaths stood at 5 this morning, but that number is expected to rise. Crews did beat back a new fire overnight in the hills above Hollywood Boulevard, and winds receded slightly, allowing air teams to resume work. But after months without rain, the land is parched, and weather alerts remain in effect until at least tomorrow evening. Now, in the midst of those fires was a Winnipeg firefighter. He was in LA visiting his girlfriend and found himself caught in the thick of it. CBC's Riley Laychuk spoke to him and one woman who considers the Winnipegger a hero.
That's right behind us.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go, let's go!
Smoke and fast-moving flames. Not the trip to California Winnipegger Romeo Petit had imagined.
It's pretty chaotic here. I've never seen anything like it.
Tuesday night, Petit found himself caught in the midst of a raging wildfire just outside of Pasadena. The Eaton Fire, one of multiple fires blamed for at least 5 deaths and the destruction of thousands of properties. The flames fanned by strong Santa Ana winds gusting at more than 100 kilometers an hour. Petit, a lieutenant with the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service, knew he couldn't stand by and watch.
I've never seen a fire that big in my life. I've been a firefighter, like I said, 22 years. And it was surreal. The orange glows all around us. It was pretty scary stuff.
Petit, his friend and girlfriend quickly packed up what they could.
Yeah, I'm on the roof.
Before grabbing garden hoses and dousing homes, trying to help fire crews stretch thin.
We tried to put out as many hot spots, embers. We found some hoses and just put water in whatever we can get the water on.
One of those homes belonged to Karen Freeberg.
He's a hero.
Freeberg, who's lived on the steps of San Gabriel Mountain for nearly 50 years, was prepared for the worst.
My house certainly was in the midst of it and could have gone up very, very easily.
Freeberg says when she briefly returned Wednesday, her home and 6 others on her street were still standing. She says thanks to Petit.
They are true heroes and heroines for doing what they did and sticking it out up there.
I've been through it in Winnipeg. I've seen people have their house burnt down, and it's devastating. It's a loss, right? So all I'm doing is maybe if I can help just one person.
Petit plans to head back into the area to survey the damage once it's safe, while a tightly knit neighborhood watches and waits. Riley Laychuk, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now to a tragedy here closer to home. Tributes are pouring in for the chief of the Manitoba First Nations Police Service. Chief Doug Paulson died in a house fire on Wednesday morning near Portage La Prairie. The CBC's Chelsea Kemp was there today.
Doug Paulson is being remembered as a visionary, someone who changed policing for the better. Premier Wab Kinew says the devastating loss will be felt across the province.
He was somebody who believed in public safety and devoted his life to it and was working hard to make First Nations communities safer across Manitoba.
Portage La Prairie Fire Chief Brad Bailey says crews were dispatched to a fire northeast of the city near the community of High Bluff early Wednesday morning. He says there had been a 911 call that the fire was seen from a nearby highway.
Upon arrival, our crews found a completely burnt out house. Basically, all that was left was the chimney standing. Upon further investigation, they were able to determine that there could be somebody in the house.
In a statement, the chair of the Police Commission of the Dakota Ojibwe Tribal Council said, We are all connected as a united police family at this time. Chief Paulson was a passionate leader who loved our police service and its members, who served our 10 First Nation communities with pride and respect. I would like to express our heartfelt sadness for the loss of Chief Paulson to his family, friends, and colleagues. The days ahead will be challenging, but we will come together to support each other. The chief of Broken Head Ojibwe Nation said Paulson was instrumental in getting policing to his community. Gordon Bluesky said the detachment opened in October, and while Paulson had the tough exterior of a seasoned police officer, he had a special way of connecting with the people he served.
But also a very kind and caring person, which, for me went a long way, and an understanding of our people, and an understanding is that it was important that we had a culturally centered service and a force made up of persons that were First Nations themselves.
He said the spirit of Paulson's work will continue on. RCMP are continuing to investigate and are expected to share more details Friday. Chelsea Kemp, CBC News, Portage La Prairie.
Winnipeg police say a man has been arrested and charged with sexually assaulting children at an unlicensed home daycare. The man was charged back in September. He faces 3 counts of sexual assault and 2 counts of sexual interference involving children. 2 children. Police say the man was an adult when he was arrested, but he can't be named as some of the alleged offenses happened when he was a minor. Officers did not release the age of the victims, but did say it happened in the south end of the city. The man was not an employee, but had access to the home. Police say no other potential victims have come forward. The new CEO of Winnipeg's Downtown Development Agency has been handed the task of creating more housing. But former MLA Rochelle Squires also has a heavier lift ahead of her. As CBC's Bartley Kivas reports, the new boss at Centre Venture has to restore the agency's relevance.
The interest has been solidified.
Rochelle Squires is 1 week into her job as CEO of Centre Venture. The former PC cabinet minister, one of 12 Tory candidates to lose Winnipeg seats in the 2023 provincial election, has been handed the task of creating housing in downtown Winnipeg for people of a mix of incomes.
Centre Venture has a new mandate thanks to the new administration at City Hall, and with a focus on residential units, which I found really appealing given my background as a cabinet minister and having worked on that homelessness strategy and having the housing portfolio for a few years.
For the first 15 years of its existence, Centre Venture helped redevelop entire blocks of downtown. But a rift in 2014 with former Mayor Brian Bowman over land assembly for True North Square left Centre Venture sidelined. Bowman's successor was left with the choice of dissolving Centre Venture or handing it a new mandate.
We need more housing in the city of Winnipeg, and we need more development in the downtown. We need it reinvigorated.
The president of True North Real Estate Development says hiring Squires for this gig signals Centre Venture is about to be more active.
It's a pretty strong signal for the organization that it's going back to a role of activity.
Developers say Centre Venture also has to start cutting through red tape again. The company behind the James Avenue pumping station and 7 other downtown residential projects says Centre Venture hasn't been able to do this in recent years.
It's a bit challenging today to kind of navigate through the development process there in Winnipeg.
Squires says she knows there's work to do.
Building up Centre Venture to be that one-stop shop for developers and investors is really the broad vision, to make sure that we offer that concierge service to anybody who's interested in a project in the downtown area.
Squires also has one more big task: reimagining Graham Avenue after Winnipeg Transit moves its bus routes up to Portage Avenue later this year. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Weather specialist Riley Laychuk in now. And Riley, along with this warmer weather we got, just a little bit more snow came as well.
Yeah, a little dusting of snow into the early morning for Winnipeg. Brittany, actually, we're still seeing, as expected, a few stray flurries still falling through the Red River Valley and parts of southern Manitoba as we head into the evening hours here. This will taper off as we get into the evening hours tonight. Behind that, you can already start to see back into Saskatchewan here a little bit of clearing. That will give us a bit of a brief reprieve reprieve from the cloud cover and some of the snow, but we do have a little bit more on the way, which I'll get into in your long-range forecast. Temperatures today, boy oh boy, above seasonal for this time of the year. On the freezing mark, above the freezing mark in some cases, Dauphin, Winkler, Portage, +1 today, 0 in Winnipeg. We saw the temperature falling as we got through the afternoon hours. We'll see the temperature falling as we get through into the overnight hours, so -10 through the overnight period tonight. Partly cloudy skies in Winnipeg. Our winds start to drop off as well as we get through the night tonight. Light winds as we start the day tomorrow as well, -11, then we continue to fall back to -14, a bit more of a seasonal day tomorrow, Brittany. A mix of sun and clouds, bit more snow on the way. I'll go into details when I come back.
Okay, thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, as Canadians continue to struggle with high food costs, a Manitoba woman says some customers are also being overcharged for underweighted meat. More on what CBC News found after the break. Stay with us. You probably don't weigh the meat you buy, but you may start doing so after this. A CBC News investigation has found some customers are getting overcharged due to misweighed meat. Sophia Harris checked it out.
When Iris Griffin weighed the ground beef she bought in order to freeze individual portions, she says it was short, 134 grams.
I was angry. I was short by what was equivalent to an entire portion.
Griffin bought the beef at a Loblaw-owned superstore in Winnipeg. She figures the store overcharged her $1.27, an extra 8%, by including the plastic packaging when weighing and pricing the meat.
I'm being charged for this piece of plastic at the price of the ground beef.
Under federal rules, posted net weights on food labels can't include the packaging.
It is a violation of a mandatory federal regulation.
Griffin complained to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which alerted Loblaw. The grocer says, due to an error involved in a change in packaging, it sold a small number of underweighted meat products in 80 stores across Western Canada. The CFIA says it issued no fines because Loblaw fixed the problem. Okay, and weighing the meats. 1 year later, CBC News went shopping and found several packages of underweighted meat at 2 Loblaw stores and 1 Sobeys owned location, plus this Walmart. It appeared the meats had been weighed with the packaging. Calculated overcharges per item were between 4 and 11%.
Doesn't surprise me at all that it's still a problem.
Retired CFIA inspector Terry Lee says when on the job, she often found underweighted meat in stores. She says both the CFIA and grocers need to do more to protect shoppers.
It's a hidden cost to consumers. The stores, they need to do more auditing. They need to get in there and they need to check their weights more often.
In an email, Loblaw apologized for its misweighed meat and said it has reviewed all weighted products for accuracy and refreshed in-store training. Sobeys and Walmart said they're addressing the issues CBC found with third-party partners which weighed the meat. This consumer advocate says even a small weight discrepancy can, over time, add up to big profits for grocers.
Potentially into millions and millions of dollars. So there's definitely a need here for some kind of rectification that consumers get compensated.
When asked, Loblaw said it will offer compensation. Sobeys and Walmart didn't respond. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Vancouver.
For the most part, newcomers say they're having a positive experience in Canada, but they also report facing unique challenges when it comes to housing. Alexander Silberman looks at this as part of Welcome to Canada, a CBC series about immigration told by newcomers themselves.
Wow, they have visitor parking.
Vineet and Diksha Jain arrived in Saskatoon from India last year with high hopes for a better life and began searching for a home.
This looks like really spacious.
Yeah, it's spacious,
for now,
plus compact.
They saw rising rents, but being new to Canada was the biggest obstacle. With no credit history, references, or jobs, landlords kept saying no.
I was feeling like we should give up and maybe we should go back to our home country.
The long hunt for stable housing held up their path to getting settled in Canada and focusing on finding work in their fields. After 6 months of renting a room, they eventually found a place of their own.
There was always a tension back of our mind that we need to get into some good and bigger accommodation so that we can prioritize and plan our future.
The Jains are among many newcomers to Canada reporting challenges finding housing. In a survey conducted for CBC News, 8 in 10 newcomers say they've had a positive experience settling in Canada, but just more than half say they found a home that is affordable. The cost of rentals continues to grow across Canada, with most units still too expensive for the average renter. The country is rapidly building new apartments like these ones, and that's helping affordability with a record number of new rentals this year. But housing policy experts say construction is still lagging behind demand.
Supply just can't respond quickly enough.
This researcher says an influx of international students and temporary foreign workers created a rapid surge in demand for rentals.
People can get on a plane anywhere in the world this morning and arrive tonight. But we can't get a house on a production line this morning and have it ready for tonight. It takes us 5 or 6 years to get a housing built.
Others say it's a matter of too little housing and argue Canada can't afford to scale back immigration.
But simply saying that we're going to slow the population and therefore solve all of our problems, I think is actually very short-sighted and distracts us from the work that we need to do.
Welcome to our new home, Diksha.
The Gens are glad to finally have a place of their own, but they worry for other newcomers arriving in Canada and say some landlords and scammers are taking advantage of their situations. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Regina.
Riley's back in now. And Riley, right off the top of the show, we were in California showing the destruction from those wildfires, just incredibly devastating fires down there. The winds were a really big issue is what they're dealing with.
Yeah, another very windy day in parts of Southern California today, Brittany. We are looking at maybe a bit of relief starting tomorrow. I'll start big picture here. A little bit of snow in our forecast, but I want to start here quickly because some of those images that we've seen out of the southern states absolutely incredible and devastating at the same time. That's because we've seen some very strong Santa Ana winds crossing the Sierra Nevada mountain range. So there's been a couple things at play. First, this area of low pressure that was over Texas starting to slide its way toward the east, and an area of high pressure. Those were converging and really pushing some of that very strong air, warming it up and pushing it through some of those mountain canyons, mountain valleys, and really supercharging and super speeding some of that air as it moved through. We're starting to see that break down a little bit. Winds not directly out of the west today like we saw yesterday, so we'll see a little bit of relief in that part of the continent tomorrow. Back here in Canada, starting to set up a little bit of a high pressure to the west. That will start to lead to some clearing here in Manitoba, albeit briefly as we get through the next couple of days. Here's the remnants of that area of low pressure that brought us a little bit of snow through the day today. Behind that, though, another area of low pressure poised to bring us a little more snow to parts of the province. So Friday starts mainly sunny. As we get through the rest of the day, we start to see some cloud building in, and there's that weather maker. As we get late Friday into Saturday, we start to see some of that snow moving into western and northern parts of the province. This particular model is pushing this a little bit further east than it was yesterday. So Winnipeg looking at, I'm saying, periods of light snow to some light flurries as we start Saturday, really on and off as we get through the day on Saturday. More of a steady snow into the Westman region. We'll talk amounts in just a moment. Behind that, a little bit of clearing once again. We start to get some sunny breaks as we get back into Sunday. So in terms of accumulation, most of that happening on the western side of the province. I mean, for places like Dauphin, Swan River, 5 to 10 centimeters not out of the question. Certainly a dusting to a few centimeters expected in the Red River Valley by the time we get to this time on Saturday. So do prepare for a little bit of snow really province-wide as we get late Friday into the day on Saturday. Look at some of our wake-up temperatures for Friday. Far cry from where we were early this morning in the minus single digits. Minus 18 in Brandon first thing in the morning, minus 19 in Swan River, close to minus 30 in parts of the north, and minus 31 tomorrow in Tuduli Lake. Winnipeg, we wake up to minus 11. Tomorrow, our temperature continues to fall down to minus 14 by the afternoon. Light snow through the day on Saturday, minus 9, and then we're sinking back down into the deep freeze, Brittany, as we start next week. Some relief after that. I'll have that in your 7-day.
Okay, thanks, Riley. Well, here's a look at the river trail from the Osborne Bridge. More than 1.5 kilometers now open. More to come. Stay with us. As we told you earlier, the two largest wildfires burning outside LA remain 0% contained. Conditions remain perilous. With more now from LA, Steve Futterman has this report.
With the Santa Ana winds less intense, fire crews went on the attack, going after the destructive fires both on the ground and from the air. Helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft spent the day dropping water and retardant on hot spots. On day 3, those who live in LA and surrounding areas were told the blunt reality of what they are facing. The recovery won't be easy.
Preliminary reports estimate the damage or destroyed structures to be in the thousands. It is safe to say that the Palisades fire is one of the most destructive natural disasters in the history of Los Angeles.
The Pacific Palisades area right here is probably the hardest hit. Just look at this, block after block, where homes once stood, basically nothing now exists. You may have heard about the gridlock that existed when people were trying to escape. There were so many people trying to leave that the road here, this is Sunset Boulevard, was just completely jammed. And as the fire approached, people simply abandoned their vehicles and left. These were burned, these others survived. Amidst the damage and destruction, 20 people have so far been arrested on suspicion of looting. Law enforcement officials say it will not be tolerated.
Our first choice isn't to do enforcement, it's not to make arrests, it's to help people. But if people choose to commit crimes, they're going to be held accountable.
And already there are people pointing fingers. LA Mayor Karen Bass being criticized by some for being in Ghana on Tuesday, attending the inauguration of that country's new leader.
When we are safe, when lives have been saved and homes have been saved, we will absolutely do an evaluation.
The fire crews may have tried to go on the offensive today, but the fires continue to burn and expand and destroy. While there was hope today for fire crews to try to get the upper hand, this brief respite in the winds may not last. The forecast calls for the winds to slightly increase over the next few days. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Pacific Palisades, California.
The body of former President Jimmy Carter is back in his hometown and final resting place of Plains, Georgia. A change of scene from earlier in the day in Washington, where some of the world's most powerful people gathered to say goodbye to the 39th U.S. president. Carolyn Malone reports.
Tributes flowed in for former President Jimmy Carter on Thursday at a state funeral, the highest honour for the former leader who was known as much for his one-term presidency as for his humanitarian work. His grandson, Jason Carter, called him a man with vision who stuck to his principles and pushed for an end to racial discrimination and mass incarceration.
His political life and his presidency for me was not just ahead of its time, it was prophetic.
Among the hundreds of mourners in the Washington National Cathedral were all 5 living current and former US leaders. President-elect Donald Trump sat next to Presidents Barack Obama, George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, and President Joe Biden in one of his last major appearances before standing down.
Throughout his life, he showed us what it means to be a practitioner of good works and a good and faithful servant of God and of the people.
Also in attendance, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Imagine all the people.
A rendition of John Lennon's Imagine by Garth Brooks before the coffin left the cathedral.
You may say I'm a dreamer.
The former president returns to his hometown of Plains, Georgia, for a final burial. Caroline Malone for CBC News, Washington.
The Canadian flag atop the Peace Tower flew at half-mast in honor of Jimmy Carter. It was lowered at sunrise this morning and stayed at half-mast until sunset. Flags at all federal government buildings were also lowered, and flags at all Canadian missions in the United States will be at half-mast from now until sunset on January 27th. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gave an interview to CNN after attending Jimmy Carter's funeral, and he was asked what his #1 piece of advice for his successor would be when it comes to dealing with incoming President Donald Trump.
understand that the win-win is what we need. Making sure that everyone understands that we do better when we work together, that yes, the American president has a capacity to hurt the Canadian economy. There's no question about that. But anything an American president does to hurt the Canadian economy will also hurt American consumers, American workers, and American growth.
The province is putting $17 million into Manitoba's aerospace sector. The investment will be through Manitoba's Magellan Aerospace. The money will go towards creating jobs and opportunities. The province's economic development minister says Manitoba's aerospace sector is one of the largest in the country, and this means it will get bigger.
That brings in $441 million into our GDP every year, represents $369 million worth of our exports out of Manitoba, and over 4,300 jobs. The investment that we're making today is going to add to the number of people working in this really exciting sector.
The money means 64 new highly skilled jobs for Manitobans and benefit 150 students every year with internships and co-op programs. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario has released a study examining the problem of homelessness in that province and the toll it takes on individuals, families, communities, and governments. Nicole Williams has more.
Living on the streets in Canada during the winter means being exposed to freezing temperatures, even when the consequences can be deadly.
I don't know what the answer is to why he died in the cold.
In the early hours of Monday morning, a man was found on the streets in medical distress in Ottawa in the frigid cold. First responders took him to hospital, where he was pronounced dead. This woman, who lives near where the man died, says she would often see him and say hello.
Wherever he was just a part of the community and a fixture here. And to not have him here is heartbreaking.
We're at a real tipping point. Without concrete action, it is only going to get worse.
On Thursday, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario released a report detailing just how many people are living on the streets in the province. According to the study, 80,000 people across Ontario were known to be homeless last year, more than half chronically homeless, and those numbers have grown by more than 25% since 2022.
Let's understand that this is the floor, not the ceiling of the issue.
Officials say shelters are well over capacity, and municipalities are doing their best to support those struggling despite limited resources. But what's needed is more funding.
The reality is you're either going to pay for it now or we're going to pay for it later. And what we need, our provincial and federal, on some level, partnership is to make focused investments into the gaps that we know that exist.
Advocates say homelessness is an issue being felt acutely across Canada, a problem that can seem overwhelming, but one that is solvable.
The reality is that there are a number of communities who have actually found solutions to homelessness and have effectively ended homelessness. And those are especially proof points around the world.
The government of Ontario says it's already committed $3 billion over the next 3 years to combat homelessness, but cities across the province say they need $11 billion more over the next 10 years for prevention and housing, and $2 billion on top of that for supportive services. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
There's growing reaction tonight to the news that Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, is ending its fact-checking program in the U.S. Nisha Patel now on what's behind the change and why there's concern here in Canada as well.
Two of the world's biggest social media platforms are getting rid of fact-checkers, starting in the U.S.
The fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the U.S.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg says to reduce censorship, Facebook and Instagram will instead implement community notes, similar to what's already happening on X, where commenting on the accuracy of posts is left to users. The company will also ease restrictions on topics like immigration and gender.
Time to get back to our roots around free expression.
It's a sweeping reversal for the tech giant, which started fact checks in 2016 and comes as the company tries to improve relations with the incoming U.S. president.
I think they've come a long way. Meta, Facebook, I think they've come a long way.
Nobel laureate Maria Ressa warned ending fact-checking would boost misinformation with dangerous consequences.
If Facebook allows lies to spread faster than the facts, it will splinter our reality, it will break down the shared reality, making journalism and democracy impossible.
It will be a bit more of a free-for-all.
This law professor says there have been real concerns about over-moderation by Meta and the suppression of legitimate speech.
So this feels like a bit of a course correction, but clearly it's not without its risks. If what we find is that we swing so far in the other direction.
Hate speech, threatening speech, foreign interference, clear scientific misinformation. All of that content is going to be easier to find.
This expert says social media users should be more wary about the content they consume.
Go through their social feeds, go through the sources where you're getting information from.
Meta will roll out its new policy in the U.S. this year, but as for Canada, there will be no changes for now. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, grade 12 students across the province have started writing the provincial English exam. We'll hear from students writing this exam for the first time since 2019, plus a teacher's perspective. Stay with us. Grade 12 students across the province have started writing the provincial English exam. It's the first time students have written the test since 2019. Now, the exam involves reading, researching, and writing a rough draft and a final paper. On Tuesday, CBC's Jim Agapito spoke to grade 12 students at St. John's High School here in Winnipeg who had just completed day 1 of the 4-day exam.
I expected worse for the first day because people were hyping it up like, oh, it's the hardest day and like your hands are gonna cramp.
I can say that the text was pretty easy to relate to since it was about the celebration and I experienced a lot of celebrations in life.
I'm a person who really loves like English and all that, so this was really helping me with my how I should write, like which way I should do it, how I should respond.
It went pretty well, I'd say. The teachers prepared us properly for the exam, so we kind of knew what we were walking into.
It's like taking off a Band-Aid. This is the worst part of it. The days going forward, they're a little bit more relaxed, and you can kind of ruminate on what you're writing in the evenings or time after class. So it's easier from here on out.
So Manitoba has consistently ranked among the lowest in Canada for scores in math, reading, and science. That's according to PISA, the Program for International Student Assessment. Michael Zwagstra is a high school teacher in rural Manitoba. He studied the academic performance of Manitoba kids, and this morning he spoke with Marcy Marcusa about why these exams are important.
I've always believed that we need to have a balanced approach to assessment. And to me, a balanced approach means that you have the teacher-created assessment, which of course would be the teacher assignments and teacher tests, because we can take local student needs and classroom issues into account when creating those assessments. But we also need an objective measurement tool, a standardized tool, because then it makes it much easier to ensure that certain outcomes are being met and that we're able to do comparisons from school to school and school division to school division. And so I've always supported having standardized tests. I know that last year the province had announced briefly that they were going to get rid of the grade 12 exams. There was a lot of pushback to that. And so the province, I think, made the right decision in reversing that and saying that no, the grade 12 exams will go ahead. So I think they're important, and almost every province in the country has standardized testing. Even Saskatchewan, which for quite a while didn't, has announced that they're now moving to having some standardized tests at a variety of grade levels.
I'm sure you've heard the pushback before, Michael, over the years. I mean, that standardized tests may have the benefits you're talking about, but the concern is that not all schools, are apples to apples, so to speak, in terms of levels of education, and that could be because of a whole bunch of things. There could be some factors for in terms of size of classrooms, in terms of what parts of the city or rural areas they're in. What do you say to that standardized tests could create a whole other problem?
Well, what I say to that is that it's a matter of how we use the data, how we use the information. And so one of the great values of standardized testing is that you're able to track growth and change over time. And so, yes, you will have some schools which have more challenging student populations where the baseline results are low. But if, let's say, over a 5-year period, if you're able to track an increase, even though it may still be on the lower side, the fact that it's increasing is positive. And then we want to encourage more of that to happen. And conversely, it means that if you're in a school where, let's say, you've got a lot of students from a high socioeconomic group and they're tending to do well overall, but the results are declining, but they're still doing technically well, that still points out a possible problem that we should be dealing with. And so standardized testing is a useful tool. It's used in a variety of professions. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a measurement tool which enables us to track data and to do some of these important comparisons.
What does Alberta do differently? Because they're one of the examples that you raise when it comes to standardized testing being done differently.
Well, Alberta has more standardized tests. They do it at a variety of grade levels, not just at the grade 12 level. So that would be one thing. Alberta's been doing their standardized testing for many decades now, so they have a much longer track record of it. Alberta also releases even more data than what we have here. Now, I know in Manitoba, the results are released on a school division level. That was only started to be released late in the term of the previous government. For quite a long time, it was just released provincially on an average. but Alberta even releases it by school. So you've got more information that's released, more detailed information, more grade levels where the standardized testing takes place, and a much longer track record of doing it. And the grade 12 exams there, again, just have that very long track record. And so those are some things that Alberta does differently. So more grade levels, more information that's released.
I just want to share with the listeners, PISA, which is, I mentioned, the organization that looks at these scores right after the pandemic. So this is a year ago, the data coming out from for the period of time 2018, starting through 2022. They looked at the performances across the country. And then in math scores specifically, looking at this, Manitoba had a score of 22. Just for listeners, the context of these points-based things that we're talking about is, according to PISA, a drop of 20 points is like losing out on a full year of learning. So if we're at 22, then we have significant problems in the preparedness of students. Why do you think that we have challenges here? Students continue to underperform on these tests.
I think there's a few things that we need to take into consideration here. First of all, the decline in math scores has actually happened in pretty much every province. So I don't want to overstate the situation in Manitoba. There has been a decline in other parts of the country, including in Alberta, to be honest. However, Manitoba's decline over the last 20 years has been at a higher rate than most other provinces. I think there's a few factors to consider. Again, I don't currently teach math, but I have in the past. I've always believed, and the evidence is pretty clear on this, that memorization, direct instruction, sort of more traditional teaching methods are very beneficial to student learning. And I know there's been a lot of debate about this in Manitoba, and a lot of pressure from some math professors who've been pointing out that, look, we need to have a stronger emphasis on making sure students learn standard algorithms, have it at an earlier age where students memorize their times tables and such. I mean, these things are important, and I don't think there's been enough of an emphasis in Manitoba on those things. And frankly, this has been a challenge in some other provinces as well. And I will say, too, that the provincial government's plan to change teacher certification requirements by saying that there won't be any specific subjects that prospective teachers have to take before they go into a faculty of education, I think that's a significant error. We need teachers to know their subjects, and if they're going to teach math, they should ideally know math and have taken university-level math. And so there's no simple, easy fix here, but I've always been a proponent of more traditional teaching methods because the evidence shows that they are quite effective.
Oh, that brings back memories.
I was just saying, we were just talking about that. I remember doing them in BC many, many years ago. We've been saying all week for people to stay safe outside.
Yes.
We do mean it, and we mean it extra because the roads out there right now, we're hearing from people, are pretty treacherous depending where you are in and outside the city.
Particularly along the north perimeter, north of the city. Again, it's that freeze-thaw cycle that we've seen where we were just a little on the freezing mark today, dipped just below it as we head into the evening hours here. That's creating, combined with a little bit of wind out there.
Yeah.
Doesn't take a lot before you start to see some very, very icy conditions.
Yeah, so we're seeing and hearing about black ice and people in ditches. So just be real careful out there.
And this freeze thaw will continue. I want to show you the 10-day temperature trend again tonight because this really does look like a pretty crazy roller coaster over the next 10 days or so here. So we'll start as we head into the weekend, dipping below seasonal once again, as I showed you earlier in the long-range forecast. And then as we get into next week, we start to dip up again, close to freezing by the time we get to late next week toward the weekend. Yes, this means that we'll likely see a little bit of melting, and again, doesn't take a lot of wind before we start to see some icy conditions, even some visibility concerns on the highways. And then after that, a very sharp dive back down below seasonal by the time we start to get into later January. So we'll be up and down for a little bit here, so do take care if you're going to be doing any highway travel, particularly tonight into the weekend. All right, your dog walking forecast. Here's Penny. Thanks, Michaela, for sending this picture in. Penny, with the jacket here, looks ready for a walk tomorrow morning, and you might need it because we're looking at temperatures falling as we get through the day tomorrow. So by the morning hours, looking at west winds at 10, -11. Our temperature falls through the day to -14 by the afternoon. A little bit more sun than we saw today, and we'll see a bit of cloud starting to build in by the evening hours again. Winds not as strong, but still might see some breeze out there as we get through the day tomorrow. Overnight temperatures look like this. So -10 in Winnipeg overnight, falling as we get through the overnight hours. -18s in Brandon, maybe a few flurries yet to come through the Westman region. -20 in Swan River tonight. Northern Manitoba temperatures sinking close to or below -30, so -31 into Dooley Lake. minus 28 in Thompson, Gillam, Churchill, both at minus 27 degrees. Looking at your hour by hour, here's the beginnings of that next weather maker as we get through the afternoon tomorrow through northwestern Manitoba, Flin Flon, the Pas, looking at some snow through the afternoon hours. Looking into the south, a little bit more sun tomorrow, but a mix of sun and clouds as we get through the day tomorrow. We'll start to see a bit of cloud building in, particularly into the west as we get through the afternoon hours, as you can see here. Minus 15 in Swan River by the afternoon, and then by the time we get to the late afternoon, Brittany, we're looking at temperatures falling to about minus 14 through the Interlake, minus 15 for Kenora. Your 7-day forecast is still ahead.
All right, make sure you've got everything close by to bundle up.
Exactly.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Still ahead, an unsuspecting hero. How a corgi came to the aid of a woman's cries for help. We're back right after this. Stay with us.
Let's have a look at your 7-day forecast, and we're looking at a bit of an up and down forecast here for the next few days at least. So minus 14 by the time we hit to the afternoon tomorrow. We're looking at a falling temperature through the day, minus 9, some light snow for Saturday. And then we're back into the deep freeze. A little bit of wind coming our way on Sunday, minus 16. Then we've got minus 18s for Monday and Tuesday. And then, yeah, back up to -1, a slight chance of flurries as we head through Wednesday into Thursday. So we're really warming up once again. All right, I wanted to show you a picture. Our own Prabhat Singh shot this story, this photo today as he was out and about shooting some of our stories today. Someone walking their dog on the Osborne Street Bridge, enjoying a lovely cloudy day with some sunshine this afternoon.
Looks like that pup was heading straight for Prop.
I know.
He wanted a little cuddle.
Exactly. A sudden fall in a muddy path left Jess Parker with a broken leg needing immediate emergency surgery.
She thought her cries for help would go unanswered, but an unsuspecting hero had her back. Here's your Daily Lift.
My Corgi Waldo saved my life. We're on a routine morning walk and I slipped. Instantly, I felt and heard a loud crack and I didn't have my phone on me. I looked at my leg and it was pretty gruesome. It truly was like my body was facing north, my foot was facing fully east, and my Corgi Waldo jumps right into gear. He gave me a kiss on the cheek and he ran away, which is very out of character for him. Like, he's always by my side. And I see him in the distance tugging on a stranger's pant leg. Waldo starts barking and leading him toward me. Just as the stranger gets close enough, Waldo takes off in a different direction. And sure enough, Waldo comes around the corner moments later with our landlord and gave me another kiss on the cheek, almost to say, like, I'm back, I brought help. The fact that Waldo was able to take action so quickly really made it sure that the situation didn't get any worse than it already was. And, you know, Waldo hasn't left my side. He's been with me this entire time since I've come home. So not only is he cute and smart, but he's a hero too. Thanks, buddy.
Okay, Waldo is a very good boy.
Waldo has TikTok, I saw.
Oh, and he's getting all the treats, I bet.
Yeah, but we can't forget about the cat.
Nah, Waldo did the heavy lifting. Good job, buddy. Love stories like that. I love his pictures too. He loves the camera.
So photogenic.
Stay safe out there if you're heading out tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
See ya.